All I hear is the same thing, Trump, 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 and they never waver. So what I'm saying to the left now is, no, I'm seeing something new and different here. The MAGA base has changed.
Only fascist that is an actual threat to democracy is Donald J. Trump. He already tried to end this democracy once.
There is a significant portion of the MAGA base now that is, in my opinion, right-wing populists who are actually anti-establishment, actually anti-corruption, actually anti-war. And what I'm trying to tell the left is, take the win.
And yet, out of all the janks in the world, out of all the radical leftists who have been reborn either as moderates or conservatives or whatever they're calling themselves now, almost none of them fall into the category I just described. Almost none of them have ever shown any remorse or any humility. Almost none of them have apologized to any of the people who they lied about and defamed and whose reputations they tried to destroy. Almost none of them have even been willing to admit that they were wrong.
Matt Walsh is calling out Cenk Uygur for being the fake grifting poser that he is. And it's always cool when somebody with a little bit more credibility comes out and agrees with you, sees the same things that you're seeing, and then calls them out. Because Cenk has faked out a lot of MAGA. Okay, a lot of people are thinking, oh, he's coming over too. Anna Kasparian is on her way over. Now Cenk appears to be coming over. And he's not. And it's disappointing to see so many people be tricked by this faker. So Matt Walsh calls him out. I loved making this video, and I think you guys are going to enjoy it too, so let's go ahead and check it out.
In recent months, especially since Trump's win, but even before that, we've seen some well-known figures on the left move to the right. Now, although in basically every case, they'll deny that they're moving to the right. Instead, they'll say something like, the left left me, which always turns out to be at most only partially true, but also partially their way of not having to actually admit that they were wrong about something. So you probably remember Mika and Joe on Morning Joe solemnly explaining their decision to go to Mar-a-Lago and meet with Donald Trump. They said that they agreed to restart communications with Trump and find common ground in order to heal our national divides and put an end to political warfare. In reality, it doesn't actually matter whether Morning Joe gets along with Trump or not. They have zero impact on the country either way. But in any case, before, that was still them sort of moderating a bit. And before Morning Joe's big kumbaya moment, there were other examples of this sort of thing. Anna Kasparian of the Young Turks had been making the rounds for months, criticizing the left for its excesses. Of course, somebody like Bill Maher has been doing the same thing for much longer. And there are several other examples of this kind of thing. And these are all different people and different cases that shouldn't necessarily all be thrown into the same basket. But I do have some concerns about this now familiar routine of leftists seeing the light, or sort of seeing it, and then being immediately embraced by many on the right, even celebrated and amplified as voices of reason. And I think the best way to explain my concerns is to point to another one of these newly minted voices of reason. This one also comes to us courtesy of the Young Turks. In fact, it is the creator of the show, Cenk Uygur. Now, Cenk has been a passionate, some would say vicious, unhinged, hysterical critic of Trump and MAGA and conservatives generally for many, many years. And yet, 2 weeks ago, he tweeted that he is now somehow feeling optimistic after the guy he despised and the movement he has opposed with his whole heart and soul just won. He wrote, quote, I've been trying to figure out why I'm more optimistic now than I was before the election, even though I was so against the guy who won. I know now. MAGA is not my mortal enemy, and neither is the extreme left. My mortal enemy is the establishment, and they have been defeated. Now, despite being a far-left commentator who has demonized conservatives for literally decades, he now says that MAGA is not his enemy. The establishment is his enemy. In other tweets and comments, he's called for unity between the two sides. He's criticized the extreme left, or as he now apparently calls them, the max left, and has assured us that if the folks on both sides can unite against the villainous establishment, we will be invincible. Last week, he appeared on the PBD podcast to explain this new approach, which he won't really admit is a new approach, but even so, here you go.
Here's what my left-wing friends don't understand. They think you guys are all MAGA, and MAGA means it's a cult, and you're never going to disagree with Trump. You're never going to disagree with each other, and that you are like their father's Republicans, but you're not their father's Republicans. And so our side, I've been trying to get them to realize that Joe Biden, Nancy Pelosi, all these folks that take the money, they're not on your side. They're on the establishment side, right? And guys, today, I think that, we could do something historic. I think that we could actually unite the left flank and the right flank. And I've got a model for how to do that, and I want to run it by you guys. Before, when I battled the right wing, it was a wall, right? I'm just like, nobody's listening to one another. They're just doing talking points. I hated it. And then MAGA looked like they were 100%. I'll be honest. I mean, in 2020, I was super pissed. And I said, look, I don't want to talk to Trump supporters. All I hear is the same thing. Trump, 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 Trump. And they never waver. So what I'm saying to the left now is, no, I'm seeing something new and different here. The MAGA base has changed. Okay. That doesn't mean they don't like Trump. It doesn't mean that they're not right wing. But there is a significant portion of the MAGA base now that is, in my opinion, right wing populists who are actually anti-establishment, actually anti-corruption, actually anti-war. And what I'm trying to tell the left is, take the win. Take the win. We've been standing opposed here for 20 years, trying to cut the Pentagon, trying to be anti-war, being getting money out of politics. If people say yes, for God's sake, that's our lost tribe. Those are our right-wing brother and sisters who are Americans, who are populists, who agree with us. Let's go fight the establishment together, because if we're united, they cannot stop us.
And that's where I'll jump in and tell Cenk that the reason why people were Trump, Trump, Trump was because they were trying to tell you that Trump is the answer. It was your blind hate of Trump. It was your lack of willingness to understand and hear MAGA out, while we screamed from the rooftops, Donald Trump is the answer that you and we are looking for. 8 years ago, you resisted us. Now you're scared. Now you realize you're on the wrong side of history.
Brothers and sisters. Very nice sentiment. Cenk says that he has a plan. In fact, he said in the interview he had a plan to unite us all. He's all about unity. And he says that the MAGA base has changed. Now it is actually anti-establishment, anti-corruption, and anti-war. But, there's some rather significant problems here. And the first and most obvious is that the MAGA base has always been anti-establishment, anti-corruption, and anti-war. Those have been by far the defining features of the base from day one. But Cenk pretends that this was only a recent development so that, again, he can avoid actually admitting that he was wrong. In fact, he goes further. He takes credit. He pretends that the MAGA base has come to him, that this is a left-wing win, basically. Now, the other problem, and it's a big one, is that Cenk extends this olive branch to Trump's supporters and praises them for their stand against corruption and war. But here's what he was saying about Donald Trump as recently as last October.
He's a dictator. He's a fascist. That's not hyperbole. So, and here I'll upset a bunch of people on the left. Ron DeSantis and Nikki Haley are not fascists. They're terrible people for other reasons, but they've never done a coup against America. They don't use direct Nazi quotes that Trump does. The only fascist that is an actual threat to democracy is Donald J. Trump. He already tried to end this democracy once. And guys, last thing. The other day, he said, immigrants are poisoning the blood of our nation. That quote has only been used by Adolf Hitler and Donald J. Trump. So he's telling you ahead of time, I'm a Nazi. It's not like I didn't warn you. I used absurd Hitler quotes. I pulled them out of history, said them for no reason, just to let you know I am a Nazi.
So after hearing everything that we've heard up to this point, I want to ask you guys, and you can let me know in the comments, do you think Cenk Uygur would be out here saying the things that he said on the PBD podcast had Kamala Harris won this election? Because to me, I think he would be out here screaming from his high horse that I was right the whole time and you guys suck. Because if there's one thing that we've learned over these last 8 years, when Donald Trump won in 2016 and then when he lost in 2020, is that the left doesn't know how to win with grace, and they're even worse losers.
So anyway, let me see if I understand this correctly. Trump is a fascist Nazi dictator, and yet his win makes you optimistic for the country, and the supporters of the fascist Nazi dictator are not your enemies? They're your brothers and sisters? Is that it, Cenk? You're optimistic that Hitler himself was elected? And you want to unite with Hitler's supporters? You want to unite with literal, actual Nazis? So what are you, coming out as a Nazi sympathizer? Is that what's happening? Now, you might say that I'm not being very charitable. Now, after all, that was a year ago. Now, granted, I could probably find about 300 examples of Cenk calling Trump Hitler in the last 2 months, but I didn't feel like spending that long watching Cenk clips on YouTube, so this is the one we're going with. Maybe there aren't any clips more recent than that. I don't know. Maybe Cenk had this conversion experience and became a reasonable moderate right after that segment was recorded. Maybe he's been a reasonable person for a whole year. Now, that would mean he spent 53 years of life as a left-wing crackpot and 1 year as a rational human being. That's good enough, isn't it? Now, Cenk says that I'm a lunatic on the trans issue, even though I have been right about the issue for 10 years. While he's just now coming around to mildly criticizing some of the excesses of this, what he perceives to be excesses of this ideology. But even if his criticisms are weak and tentative and toothless, which they are, he is still inching ever so slightly in my direction. I have not come his direction even 1 centimeter. He is cautiously tiptoeing towards me on this topic while still condemning me as a lunatic on the same topic. Now, the case of Cenk Uygur's non-conversion conversion perfectly illustrates all of the reasons why conservatives must take these sorts of people with a giant boulder-sized chunk of salt. Now, it's of course possible that somebody who was once an extreme leftist might actually see the light. When that happens, we should embrace them with open arms and generous spirits. But if it's genuine, we should see on their part some amount of remorse. They should be willing to admit they were wrong. They should apologize to the people on our side who they have unfairly demeaned and slandered and villainized. If all of that happens, then I'll be the first to shake their hand and welcome the prodigal son as he returns. Yet, even in that case, I would not immediately take that person and put them on stage and listen to their ideas like they're thought leaders of a movement they just joined 80 seconds ago. If you've been wrong about everything forever and have now changed your mind, I'm glad you changed your mind. But you certainly have less insight, less wisdom, and less to offer intellectually than people who have not spent their entire adult lives on the wrong side of literally every issue. So you, as the person crossing over, should recognize that and have humility and be willing to take a back seat. And yet, out of all the Cenks in the world, out of all the radical leftists who have been reborn either as moderates or conservatives or whatever they're calling themselves now, almost none of them fall into the category I just described. Almost none of them have ever shown any remorse or any humility. Almost none of them have apologized to any of the people who they lied about and defamed and whose reputations they tried to destroy. Almost none of them have even been willing to admit that they were wrong. Instead, they claim that they've remained consistent while the left abandoned them. And this is, as I said, at the absolute most, only partially true. There is always at least another part, the part where, in fact, they have drastically changed their tune on a number of serious issues, but they won't admit it. At the very least, these are people who ignored and probably scoffed at and demeaned the conservatives who told them that the left was on a slippery slope into madness. They didn't listen. So at the very least, they were wrong about that. But they won't admit that either. And yet they show up and they have all their ideas, and we're supposed to listen to them. And they even have the gumption to turn around to conservatives who have been in this movement forever and try to lecture them. And so, oh, no, I'll tell you how to really argue on these issues. What the hell do you know? You've been wrong about everything. You just started being sort of right about a few things 10 seconds ago. Maybe have some humility and shut up and listen for a few. You haven't listened at all your entire life. Maybe you should be listening now. So what all this tells us, at best, is that these people still have all of the same arrogance and ignorance that made them radical leftists in the first place. It also tells us that these are not credible voices we should be listening to or taking seriously. But of course, this is all just the best case scenario. So far, I've only really considered the possibility that these supposed former radical leftists have sincerely converted, but are just too egotistical and shallow to admit their own errors. There is the other scenario, which I think in many cases is far more likely. That's the scenario where the conversion is not remotely sincere, where somebody like Cenk Uygur pretends to have turned a new leaf and discovered a strange new respect for the conservative base for the one simple and straightforward reason that his traffic is tanking and the clicks are drying up and he's looking for a new shtick. He's going where the money and the audience are. Now, I can't see inside the souls of any of these people or read their minds, but I can read between the lines. And when I look there, I see the word grifter in giant bold letters. That's why I'm not interested in hearing Cenk's ideas for how to unite and heal the country. I'm not really interested in hearing his ideas about anything.
And I 100% agree. If Cenk Uygur really believes this, maybe he should put his money where his mouth is, right? Because we've seen that out of these other people that have recently converted from the left. Joe Rogan let Donald Trump come on his podcast after saying for many years that he wasn't going to allow it to happen. Elon Musk put lots of money behind the Trump campaign. He was on stage with Trump campaigning for people to vote for Donald Trump. He's completely bought into the perspective of making America great again, making it the greatest that it's ever been. And I got to say, I'm really looking forward to Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy under the, the coaching wing of Ron Paul, essentially, seeing what they can do with this new Doge department. I have high hopes, and I think that you guys do as well, especially if you're a MAGA type individual. But when it comes to these pundits like Mika Brzezinski, Joe Scarborough, Cenk Uygur, and even Anna Kasparian, who, she's been coming over to the MAGA side a little bit more and more, but she's really dragging her feet, I gotta be honest with you. And it's not something, it's like taking the red pill. Once you see the truth, you can't go back. And so I don't know. I'm wondering if she's just grifting too. It's a slow grift, or I don't know. Maybe you guys can let me know if you think that she really actually maybe voted for Trump this election. It's something that a lot of people believe that she might have done in secret. But like Matt Walsh said, we got to take these people with a huge, massive rock of salt, or whatever he called it, boulder of salt. And not only that, these people need to repent, right? They need to repent from their leftist ways. Now, Cenk Uygur, he said on Tim Pool's show that the money is on the right, which I wonder if that means that this whole Soros money is drying up for the lefties now that Donald Trump has won and there's no stopping him over the next 4 years, essentially, now that we have the House and the Senate, well, at least for the next 2 years. But yeah, I believe that these people are just faking it for the money. They're grasping at straws to save their career. They realized that they've backed the wrong horse. They've bet their careers on Kamala Harris and the Democrats having power for forever, essentially. And the threat of Donald Trump removing the swamp and empowering people like Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy is something that these people are super scared of, and they're afraid of becoming irrelevant. And with that, I'll wrap this one up. If you're an America First type individual, you're in the right place. So make sure you hit that like button, share this video, and please subscribe to the channel. And before I go, I want to let you know you can find me live on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Saturdays at 6 p.m. Eastern Time on this channel with the Jar Openers podcast. We have a Discord link in the description. I look forward to seeing you guys there. But if I don't see you there, hopefully I'll see you in the next video, because you're not going to want to miss it.